Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm in Granada, so it's already after 11 p.m. So good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. We are gathered today to celebrate the publication of Selim Temo's Nightlands. My name is Öykü Tekten. I am one of the founding members of Pinsapo Collective and Press, and Nightland is our new book translated by Alana, who is with us today, Alana Marie Levinson-LaBrosse, and Zêdan Xelef, who is unfortunately not here because of a conflict in schedule. Um, we This book is the first new series called Kurdish Poetry Series. We are featuring only contemporary Kurdish poets writing in four of the major Kurdish dialects. And before delving into the book and introducing our speakers today, I would like to say a few words about Pinsapo. Pinsapo is a New York-based small press and a collective with a particular focus on work in and about translation. We are not affiliated with any institution, which means we don't really have a regular funding or support. However, like in many other projects, Lost and Found, the CUNY Poetics Document Initiative supported us in bringing Nightlands out into the world. So we are very thankful to Lost and Found family for their generosity and for supporting us. I also would like to say a few words about how I met Temo and how this book came about. It was 2015. I read a piece by Temo. He wrote about Yaşar Kemal, one of the greatest novelists, Kurdish novelists, who died in February 2015. I was very much moved by Temu's account of Kemal and their friendship, what it meant to lose a giant like him. So I wanted to translate a piece into English, which I did. And from then on, Tem and I have been dreaming about translating Kurdish poets, Kurdish literature. And in about 8 years, that dream came true thanks to Alana and Zêdan. We have had several difficulties, so perhaps, this could be part of the conversation we will have later during the event. But, I'm very grateful that this book exists, and I'm really grateful that we got all the support from our community and more than anyone, really, our translators. So let me introduce you to our speakers today. Alana Marie Levinson-LaBrosse is a poet, translator, assistant professor at the American University of Iraq, Süleymani. She earned her PhD in Kurdish studies at the University of Exeter, specializing in 19th century poetry, and holds an MFA from Warren Wilson College, as well as an MAD from the University of Virginia. Her writing has appeared in Modern Poetry Translation, World Literature Today, Words Without Borders, among others. Her book-length works include Kajal Ahmed's Handful of Salt in 2016, Abdullah Pashir's Dictionary of Midnight, published in 2019, Nali's My Moon is the Only Moon, 2021, and Farhad Pirbal's The Potato Eaters, 2023. She serves as the director of Kashkul and was the founding director of Süleymani UNESCO City of Literature. Here also we have Jordan El Gravli. He's an American, French, Moroccan writer and translator whose stories and creative nonfiction have appeared in many anthologies and reviews. Editor-in-chief and founder of the Merkez Review, he is the co-founder and former director of the Levantine Cultural Center, the Merkez, in Los Angeles. He is the editor of Stories from the Center of the World, New Middle East Fiction, published by City Lights this year, and co-editor with Malu Halasa of Sumud, a new Palestinian reader, which will be published by Seven Stories next year. By the way, Jordan wrote an excellent review of Temo's book, Nightlands. James, our tech person, a wonderful person I just met today. He will be sharing the links with you in the chat if you would like to take a look, if not already. Both the review also, I think the link to purchase the book is already in the chat. Okay, great. And here we have our dear poet, Selim Temo. He's also a translator and academic. He was born in Batman, northern Kurdistan. He earned a BA in social anthropology and ethnology from Ankara University and holds a master's and a PhD degrees in Turkish literature at Bilkent University. He was a professor of Kurdish and Turkish languages and literatures at Mardin Artuklu University until he was dismissed from his position in 2017 because of the Academics for Peace petition he signed, along with more than 2,000 academics from Turkey, in support of the political, social, and other basic rights of the Kurdish people. He is the author of 26 books, and his work has been translated into more than 10 languages, including German, Arabic, Armenian, and Italian. Nightlands is his first collection translated into English. Temo is joining us today from Paris, where he lives and works. Well, before we start, I would like you to know that at the end of our conversation, there will be a Q&A session. So please feel free to write down your questions in the chat room throughout the event. And I will gather the questions and ask them to our participants at the very end. So let's just start with a poem. I will ask Alana and Temo to read a poem from the book, of course.
Vavishtis yek lome. Barbaran Rome disotin, kralê bajarê çûcem kralê barbaran gotê me şaristaniya vekiribû em ketîne rast e leqet nebe bajarê şaristaniyê nesojin. Kralê barbaran gotê vaviştîs bila ketî biqebirin bimirin. Gava genim seridîn, gavajan danî li pey maran bimeşe. Ez ku birînim, xwe dax dikim, tu bi benên xav xwe girê de. Pirseke deyne mîna qusûrên xwe mezin, umrê xwe pê bikevîne. Gava payîz hat, gava şîn ferikê, cilê miriyan li xwe ke. Ez ku evînim, xwe dixwînim, tu biloriyan xwe daweşîne. Ji min nepirse, şikestin çi ye? Zaroka doye dîrok.
Ve Victus 1. Reproach. Barbarians had captured most of Rome and threatened to raze the city. The Roman commander attempted to negotiate with the barbarian commander, saying, "We built this civilization that has now fallen, it's true, but please, spare the city." The barbarian commander responded simply, "Ve Victus," or "Woe to the conquered." When the wheat is ripe, an ache has been set aside. Follow the snakes on foot. I, who am a wound, cauterize myself. You take raw rope and bind yourself. Hazard a question as big as your flaws. Cauterize your life with it. Once fall comes, once the grass yellows, dress up in the clothes of the dead. I, who am love, sing to myself. You dust yourself off with lullabies. do not ask me. What is vanquish? History is yesterday's child.
Thank you so much. There are 20 poems in this book, and each one of them is my favorite. So, Alana, I'll just start with you. You have done a lot for Kurdish literature, Kurdish culture, both as a professor and both as a translator. So I would like to just talk about your work and in general also your experience as a translator of this book, co-translator. So, and then I will leave the room to you, Temo, and Jordan, because I'll be translating for Temo.
First of all, just a huge thank you to Öykü for that translation effort. That is a great gift you're giving us today. I feel almost silly having someone ask me to talk about all the things I've done for Kurdish literature when I'm sitting in a room with Selim Temo, who has done arguably more for Kurdish literature in the course of his lifetime than most of us can ever hope for. So I will talk about my love of Kurdish literature and the efforts I've been hoping to serve, but only first acknowledging that Selim Temo is someone I have looked up to since long before I met him, since long before I was lucky enough to be trusted to translate this beautiful book with Zêdan Xelef. So I will do that, but only on a massive caveat that our dear Temo should answer that question too. So yes, I came to translation of Kurdish literature through my students. I knew that I wanted to translate when I moved to the university in 2011. But I also didn't know how much literature was untranslated from the language. I didn't know the massive history that that existed and had been cordoned off by the lack of translation. I mean that Selim Temo is just now reaching English is in some ways a very sad miracle. It should have happened much sooner. I'm so happy I got to be a part of it, but it should have happened 2 or 3 decades ago. So, and I came to it through my students, which ended up changing the very process of translation. The very process of translation ended up being fundamentally social for me. And I ended up working in the true sense of the word with my colleagues in a collaborative. And that collaborative, which is now the Center for Arts and Culture at the American University of Iraq Slemani, Kashkol, is full of some of the brightest minds, I think, working in and around Kurdish and the Middle Eastern region today. I feel incredibly lucky to call them friends and colleagues. And I feel really excited that they are the people who I talk with the most about our projects, what we do, how we approach them, the people with whom I'm debating how do we approach this text, how do we approach this question, and the people with whom I never worry that even strong debate or disagreement will fracture us. In fact, it usually brings us much, much closer. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question, Öykü, but I'm trying.
Yes, thank you, Alana, very much.
Yeah.
You are being way too humble, but I think I want people to really take a look at least the work that you have done through Kashkul, and the link is already in the chat. Please take a look and see what Kashkül as a collective has done. Jordan, you wanna just come in and first, tell us a bit about yourself, because I just read a bio, and also the Merkez Review, which is, I think, one of the most important platforms for us, especially for the Middle Easterners, languages and cultures. So please just tell us a bit about the Merkez, and I know that you have some questions also for Alana and Temo.
Well, okay, thank you. I'm happy to be here and to have reviewed the book early on. I actually had a question before I start for Alana. You were able to obtain a PhD in Kurdish studies at Exeter, at the University of Exeter. And I'm just wondering, considering the scarcity of Kurdish literature in English, how unusual was that you were able to do those studies there?
At the time, I was one of two, our dear Dr. Ferenges Kadiri being the other. So pretty rare. And, I like to say about Kurdish studies as a field, you either get really excited about the amount of discovery you need to do, or you despair and you don't do Kurdish studies because it's not the right thing for you. If discovery and wonder is exciting to you, then Kurdish studies is the right discipline for you. If you are looking for clearer paths, more established literature reviews, you are not in the right place. So to write my dissertation, which was, 300 pages, I translated 350 pages of classical Kurdish poetry from the 19th century in Sorani. And that anthology will come out with one of my I hear you. Sorry, my kid is watching the event, so they're waving to me through the computer. So that was published with the dissertation as an appendix. But it was an appendix that was longer than the dissertation itself, because to do the analysis on the poems, they had to be available not just in their Arabo-Persian script, but in their Latinate script. So I had to transcribe everything, and they had to be translated. So I translated everything. This is obviously a life's work that involved a lot of other people, not just me. On every single poem, we not only had a co-translator, but also expert readers in Islamic sciences, because those poems are so steeped in that tradition. Expert readers. I know, Alana. Also, expert readers in the formal usages of the language, expert readers in, because Kurdish classical poetry often can use functionally 14 different languages and 14 lines. So you have to have people who know, well, this word in Kurdish, in this dialect of Kurdish means this, in this dialect of Kurdish means something else, and in Persian means something even different. And the poet is playing between those different definitions on purpose. These are masters of the cosmopolitan nature of their time.
That sounds a little crazy making, but I want to acknowledge the fact that many of the writers that I'm familiar with, who are from what I like to call the center of the world, are multilingual hybrid people.
Yes.
One of the writers I like to work with is writes in English, Turkish, and Greek, and goes back and forth between them, and doesn't think there's anything miraculous about that. But so over here on this part of we're in this situation where being multilingual is almost expected, right?
Yeah, and being monolingual isn't considered a luxury. It's considered a like oh, pobrecito. Like, wow.
Exactly.
That's you must really be hurting, because of course everyone should. It's pretty. Everyone grows up doing it. So you're either arrogant or ignorant. But for the Kurdish identity, that sort of cosmopolitan access to culture, poetic norms, language, even different practices of Islam and different faiths, all of that is endemic to the poetry.
Got it.
As my personal opinion.
To answer your question, thank you, Öykü, about the Markaz Review. Very quickly, it grew out of the cultural center that we were running in Los Angeles for almost 20 years. And my devotion to all of this is through primarily literature, because I was a literary journalist before the cultural center, and I just returned to my roots. And I don't speak Kurdish, and my Arabic is rather poor, and my Persian is probably better than my Arabic, and my Greek is almost nil, and my Turkish forget. Actually, I learned to speak fluent Turkish for about a month, and now I've forgotten it, just because there was a Turkish woman that I was very interested in. So, but anyway, the Markaz Review is really is devoted to, well, it's all about love, isn't it?
Always.
And so is poetry.
Always.
Yeah. But the Markaz Review is just devoted really to exploring all of these different literatures and identities, and placing a premium on it, especially now in a time when we see, not only with what's going on in Turkey, but what's going on in, the cat, going on in Palestine and Lebanon. There seems to be a kind of dehumanization and almost cheapening of the value of Arab life or the lives of people from that part of the world. You know, I'm sure we're about to see a bombing campaign on Iran, and if a few thousand Iranians die, I mean, nobody on the West is going to say much about it. So, without going too much into politics, I think it's important that you, Selim, and other poets and writers get your work out there, so that people understand that it's not a region that is innately all about conflict and tribalism. Rather, there are philosophers and poets and writers and painters and traditions that are hundreds and thousands of years old. And we tend to forget that when we look at the Western headlines.
So I just want to turn to Temo, since he's also a translator and editor. Actually, I said we met in 2015, but that's incorrect, because the very first time I heard Temo's name was early 2000, and then I kind of was pleasantly surprised when I saw 2 volumes of Kurdish poetry, anthology of Kurdish poetry, which covers about 1100 years of Kurdish poetry. So, Temo, very simple question. The answer might be a long one, but why do you think that the Kurdish poetry has been ignored poetically, historically so long, even though it has a very long and documented history? What is going on?
Yes, hi everyone. Again, I started with one of my poem. I want to say, I want to start with a salutation. I would like to thank all the participants. It's a very excited night or day for me. Khalil Gibran, I think Jordan, he knows very well. Khalil Gibran says, "Human wants to speak from where his or her voice is most heard." I think poetry is written to be heard. It is possible for more people to listen and read through translation. In this sense, I would like to thank dear Alana and Zêdan, and many thanks to Öykü and Jordan also, and all partners of Pinsapo Publishing House. I have to limit speaking of greetings. Unfortunately, my English is not fluently. I am worried that I will not able to express my feelings and my thoughts in English, unfortunately. I will continue in Turkish. Yani Kürt şiiri, Kürt ulusu gibi parçalanmış bir şiir. Kürdistan'ın içerisindeki sınırlar aynı zamanda Kürt şiiri içerisindeki sınırları da gösteriyor. Ben bahsettiğin antolojiye başladığım zaman doğrusu sadece kuzey parçasındaydım ve daha çok kütüphanelerin dip köşelerinde pek çok belge buldum diyebilirim. Öyle başlayabilirim biraz.
I will speak in Temo's voice. So, Kurdish poetry is separated and raptured poetry, like Kurdistan, and the borders, the limits within Kurdistan is very similar to the borders and limits within the Kurdish poetry. When he started translating and editing the anthology of Kurdish poetry, he was in the northern part of Kurdistan.
Evet, antoloji halen bugüne kadar da Kürt şiiri açısından yapılmış en geniş antoloji. 1700 sayfadan daha fazla. 300 kadar şair ve biri ölü, dördü yaşayan 5 Kürt lehçesinden şiirler içeriyordu.
The anthology, the Kurdish poetry anthology, so far has been the most extensive one. It has more than 300 poets included, over 1,700 pages, and the poems are translated from 5 dialects of Kurdish. One is extinct, dead, and 4 are still alive.
Yani antoloji bahsini şu cümleyle tamamlayabilirim. 2000 yani ilk baskısı olan 2007'den bugüne 17 yıl sonra diyebilirim ki sadece benim kimseye gösterilmeyen el yazmaları, kimseye gösterilmeyen defterler üzerinden sanırım Kürt şiirine hiç bilinmeyen 60'a yakın şair eklemiş oldum. Ve diğer 3 parçayla yani Doğu, Güney ve Küçük Güney dediğimiz Rojava Kürdistan'ıyla daha yoğun ilişki geliştirmekle birlikte Kürt şiirinin çok küçük bir kısmının o antolojide yer aldığını düşünüyorum. Şimdi halen de en büyük antoloji olmasına rağmen Kürt şiirinin çok küçük bir bölümünü kapsadığını söyleyebilirim.
I'll start from the very end because it's so Temo. He says, even though this is so far the most extensive anthology, which is still, I mean, it's still a very limited portion of the Kurdish literature and poetry. Since 2007, since the publication of this anthology, about 17 years later, he thinks there's more to discover, and also he found through manuscripts and notebooks from some dark rooms in a library archives, he was able to bring about 60 poets who are unknown to many, and they are also included in this anthology. But again, as Temo said, this is still kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Kurdish literature.
Sanırım bu yeterli bu bahis için, değil mi?
Yeah. Jordan, I will just turn to you again. because you have more questions, I know.
Well, one question I have, and this is probably a naive question for all of you, but maybe not for everyone in the audience. Apart from your work, Selim, and Yashar Kamal, and Bakhtiar Ali, who are the other Kurdish writers today that we should be translating or paying attention to?
Batı'da şu anda bulunduğum Batı'da pek çok teori olduğunu biliyorum ve bu teorilerin önemli bir kısmına göre hangi dilde yazarsanız yazın, eğer kendi gerçekliğinizden bahsediyorsanız kendi mensup olduğunuz halkın yazarı sayılıyorsunuz. Fakat ben öyle düşünmüyorum.
In the West, where Temo and I think most of us are now, okay, there are so many theories, linguistic theories, and according to some of them, no matter in what language you write, as long as you are able to express your self-culture, it's fine, but Temo doesn't think so.
Dolayısıyla Yaşar Kemal'le çok yakın bir dostluğum, aramızdaki 50 yıllık yaş farkına rağmen, çok yakın dostluğuma rağmen Yaşar Kemal yazdığı dil itibariyle Kürt edebiyatının içerisinde değerlendirilemeyeceğini düşünüyorum. Türkiye. Evet.
Okay, I'm switching tongues, so I'm speaking as a translator, not an interpreter. So, Kemal, Yaşar Kemal, he, though they had, Temo and Kemal had a 50-year age difference, but they were good friends. And yet, because Kemal did not write in Turkish, he cannot be considered as part of the Kurdish literature.
Dolayısıyla Bahtiyar Ali dışında başka dillerde bulabildiğimiz yazarlara döndüğümüzde ben Kürtçe yazan yazarları anlamak istiyorum. O noktada evet, Bahtiyar Ali pek çok dilde bulunuyor. Özellikle Almanca'da. Benim için de olağanüstü bir yazar. Fakat onunla aynı olgun yazarlıkta pek çok isim var, fakat Kürtçedeki Jameson'ın bahsettiği o çeviri endüstrisinin olmaması Kürtçe'de Kürtçe yazan yazarları başka dilde bulmayı zorlaştırıyor doğrusu.
Bahtiyar Ali, he's an excellent writer. He's available in many languages, especially in German. Yet, like many other great writers, once again, the issue is whether the literature is written in Kurdish or Turkish or any other language. And Temo referred to Jameson and his the translation industry. So most of the Kurdish literature doesn't exist in translation, but also most writers, Kurdish writers, don't write in Kurdish.
So my question then is, do you consider it less Kurdish, less authentic if you have a Kurdish writer like Zêdan, for example, who's now writing in English directly? Is it still Kurdish writing if it's written in English?
Evet, İngilizce'de, Fransızca'da, Almanca'da daha kuzey, Avrupa'nın daha kuzey dillerinde yazan bazı yazarlar var. Fakat ben her bir Kürdün her şeye rağmen 100 yıllık yok etme çabalarına rağmen var olan dillerine borçlu olduklarını düşünüyorum.
So Temo thinks that Kurdish writers, Kurdish intellectuals, despite the ongoing efforts to destroy the Kurdish culture, language, there is, a lot of political and political pressure on Kurds. Still, Temo thinks each writer still owes it to Kurdish and should write in Kurdish.
Başka dillerde bahsettiğim gibi başka dillerde imkanları daha fazla olan dillerde yazılan yazarları yadırgamıyorum elbette. Fakat 100 yıllık yasaklamanın Kürtçeyi bir edebiyat dili olarak çok diri tuttuğunu, bir edebiyat dili olarak belki bütün imkanları olan dillerden daha elverişli bir dil olduğunu düşünüyorum.
He doesn't condemn or judge those Kurdish writers who prefer to write in languages, more accessible languages, perhaps, or more hegemonic. That's what my edition, sorry. And yet, 100 years of pressure and ongoing destruction of Kurdish literature gives the language a more space, Kurdish literature, more space. I think that's all I got. Sorry, Temo. I missed.
Yıpranmamış bir dil olduğunu söyleyebilirim. Yani bu şöyle bir dile benziyor. Bir yazar düşünün ki dünyanın bütün dillerini biliyor ve dünyanın bütün dillerinde mutsuz ve bir gün yolda yürürken yerde çok canlı bir dil buluyor.
He just says, imagine a writer who knows all the languages of the world, and then one day just walking down the street and finds a language, a live, very live language.
Ama o dilin içerisinde hepsinden daha fazla mutsuz olacak.
And yet, in that language he finds on the street, that writer would be more unhappy. Is that the end of the story? Yes.
Evet.
All right.
And I guess I have one more question to follow up on this. As I wrote in my review, of course, the repression of, quote, minority languages has gone on in many countries. In Spain, they tried to repress, Franco repressed Catalan and Basque and languages, and Stalin did that to Yiddish, and in Turkey today, Kurdish remains a contested language. Are you ever surprised that this is still happening in the 21st century?
Evet, bu insanlar, dünyanın her tarafına insanlar haksızlıklara ve zulme karşı çıktılar ve kurtulmak için çaba sarf ettiler. Benim mensup olduğum halk herhalde özgürlüğünü kazanan halklar kadar mücadele etti. Ve bunun halen gerçekleşmemiş olması tabii ki çok şaşırtıcı.
It is quite surprising that the people I belong to have been fighting for their freedom, like many other peoples in the world who have been faced with oppression, repression, and war and destruction. But I'm surprised that, unlike others, we have not achieved our goal to liberate ourselves.
Bu baskının devam etmesinden çok bahsetmek istemiyorum. Bu baskının halen var olması benim için çok şaşırtıcı. Bu baskılardan
He doesn't want to talk about why this repression is ongoing. But again, what's surprising is that it's now happening, still happening.
belki diğer dünyadaki pek çok yazardan daha büyük olan şansım bu Kürt edebiyatının bütün lehçelerini okuyabilmek, klasik halk ve modern edebiyatını anlayabilmek. Bu noktadan baktığımda bir Kürt olarak değil, böyle şanslı bir yazar olarak baktığımda bir edebiyat olayından bir edebiyat olayının içerisinde olmak beni daha fazla heyecanlandırıyor. Politik olarak durduğum yer zaten malum. Dolayısıyla daha edebiyat içerisinde olmak beni daha fazla ifade ediyor, tanımlıyor diyebilirim.
As a writer, I am quite lucky because I do know all the dialects of Kurdish language, and I know the classics in those dialects. And he also mentions that his political stance is pretty clear, but as a poet or as a literary figure, he thinks he has been very fortunate because he has access to his not only his own language, which is Kurmanji, but all the other dialects of Kurdish and all the new literary works.
Sadece bir cümle, küçük bir cümle daha uzattığımı biliyorum. Ben bu edebiyatın yazarı olmaktan önce okuruyum.
And he says that he is, before being a writer in Kurdish, he has been a reader of Kurdish.
I'm not sure it's possible to be one without the other. From an outsider's perspective, I see how, Kurdish readings of poetry are still attended by hundreds, if not thousands of people. I can't accurately describe it better than to say it's like, they still look like wonderful poets and academics. They all have these lovely tweed jackets with the elbow patches. They're also self-composed. And unlike American academics or American poets, they have to have bodyguards to pull adoring fans off of them at readings. So the social contract, I think, between Kurdish writers and the Kurdish people is incredibly vigorous. It's incredibly vibrant. It's very alive, and very
Alana,
close.
It would be very nice if you could write an article for the Markaz Review about how people are clinging to the poets and, stampeding the poetry readings, and there's so many of them and so forth. I mean, that's just not something that we would expect in here.
I would be so happy to, because I would get to brag about not only all these poets who I love, who the world obviously should know, but also all these readers. Because, we're talking about, Temo mentioned, we owe it to Kurdish to write in Kurdish. And I think the most true iteration of that is we owe it to ourselves to keep the languages we love, languages of creation. And as soon as language preservation turns language into some sort of mummification, some sort of dead thing that we all pass by in a window and say, ooh, how beautiful that must have been once, we've failed. That's not language preservation. So creation and preservation, at least at Kashkul, this is what we always say, have to be joined. And then, I really love that Temo said, yes, it's 1,700 pages, but it's nothing compared to how much there is to discover. I dipped into the archives for 60 seconds the other day and found a poet for each second I was in there. That's right. There are so many poets, and because the struggle for Kurdish autonomy has gone on so long, you have centuries of records that have been taken from where the records were generated and centralized, quote unquote, in these centers of empire. centralized in these centers of now nation states, where languages and cultures like Kurdish are a very significant threat to the monolith. They're a threat to simplistic understanding. And so, why has the struggle been so long? If you read Abdullah Peshaw's poem, he'll say, it's us, it's all us, the nail in the coffin, the hammer in the nail, it's all us, it's our fault. He says a lot of other things too. He's not simplistic either. But I think the real answer is the struggle has been long because the monolith is scared. And simplistic understanding is easier to cleave to than exploration and discovery. Yeah, so at Kashkul, when we talk about, like, sometimes people will ask me things like, who should we read next? Or who should we be paying attention to? And or like, do you ever get competitive with other translators? And I just try not to laugh. Because it's like, competitive with other translators? There's so much to do. You feel like translating Kurdish? You come to me, you come to Temo, we'll give you the people we've been trying to translate for 20 years. Like, there's so much great work. I mean, so I just popped up and I went and got this beautiful book, which came out this summer.
Ah, yes.
Farhad Pirbal's Selected Poetry. One of the most visually challenging books I've ever seen in translation from any language. Obviously, I would be remiss. My poor co-translator GR would hate me for not raising that one, but I feel a little bit gross. And then here is this anthology, which is of Shingali poets, all under the age of 30, I want to say, 35. Some of them writing in Kurdish, some of them writing in Kurmanji, which they wouldn't call Kurdish, some of them writing in Arabic, some of them writing in English, some of them writing in 3 or 4 of those languages. So that question of what is Kurdish is, I think, very live. What is Kurdish is a very live question, and lots of people answer it different ways. And I also think the question of where to look is a question of, who cares? Pinsapo cares, Deep Vellum cares, Archipelago cares, Unnamed cares. And if you want a really great consistent source, Kashkul Books is publishing close to a dozen titles a year, all translated from Kurdish. So there are ways to sort of, because love is not finite, but attention is. So there are ways to kind of take that finite attention and direct it to publishers who have demonstrated commitment to bringing those books to you. And that way also I conveniently avoid having to name certain poets over other poets or certain writers over other writers. I love them all. It would be like trying to name a favorite child. So yeah.
Well, I think, Alana, you just kind of covered like all the reasons why it took 8 years for this book to, because yeah, we imagined and we start working on it. Then the main problem was, where are the translators? Temo shouldn't be his own translator, I thought, or he thought so. So we met, you and I and Zêdan, in 2020. Yeah, más o menos. Okay. So yeah, we need translators. If anyone over here in the audience who is a translator, please get in touch. The series, Kurdish Poetry Series, just began, and we have 2 more projects in the making, but we definitely need more translators, more poets. And again, our goal is to translate from the 4 major dialects. So if you speak and translate one of those major dialects, please get in touch with me. And also, again, I also would love to acknowledge Deep Vellum has been publishing Kurdish literature. Also, I am one of the co-editors of the Best Literary Translations anthology, which is also published by Deep Vellum. Please support us. Please be our readers and translators.
Yes.
We do need you. We can continue, but we are kind of running out of time. I would like to ask our audience to join us. If you have any questions, please write it down in the chat. You can write in Turkish, English, Kurdish, French. I think these are the 4 languages we can cover for now. And yeah, just ask away your questions. If you don't have any questions, that's also fine. I see that we have many friends in the audience. I can also ask James to unmute all so we can actually start chatting. But also I would like to acknowledge 2 other people who were very instrumental in making this book. Ethan Gould, he is a dear friend, an amazing artist who designed the unique logo of the series. He's here. And Rick Royer, I don't think he's here, but he's our book designer. He's part of our family as well, like Ethan. So thank you so much for the love and passion and for, helping us create this book. I don't see any questions, so I will ask James, are you here? Yeah. Oh, okay, there is a question here. I think this is to everyone. What do you think we should do with works that are written in a style that are either not easy to get translated or simply impossible? This is from Bawar Marofi.
I have a really easy answer to this one, and I don't mean it to sound flippant, though it might, and then I can turn it over to Temo, who is also a translator and has worked a lot between time periods in Kurdish literature, and so has I'm sure confronted this exact question. I'm going to just address the underlying assumption of the question, which is that some translation is possible and other translation is impossible. And I'm going to say my personal opinion is that all translation is impossible. Beginning with the first act of translation, which is from this thing, which is infinite and amorphous, to text, which is finite and fixed, theoretically, sort of. So you're already doing an act of translation as an author that then is replicated throughout the translation process of language to language. This is also language to language. So I think all translation is impossible, which then makes the question less about what's possible and not possible, and more about simply how do you do it? Who are you as a translator? How do you understand your choices, and how can you be transparent about your choices? I don't tend to translate form. When I have a poem written in form, I don't tend to translate that into form. But that's become less and less true over the years. And it changes now based on who I'm translating, what the form I think means to them, what the form means in English. For instance, Shene and I, a co-translator from Kashkul, who went on to an MFA at University of Iowa in translation, she and I ended up retranslating all of the ghazals from 19th century Sorani Kurdish because we realized we could get pretty close, actually, to the form in English. We also retranslated all of the tahmiz from 19th century Sorani because we realized, again, we could get pretty close and the form hadn't been brought into popularized English. So we thought that was actually particularly important to introduce the poems with the form. So I think start with the underlying assumption of the question, which is that some is possible and some is not possible. And once you say it's all impossible, then you just get to say, now what? what do our decisions mean? How can different decisions serve this poem well or poorly? And what is poorly and what is well? All of that is up to the individual, up to the translator, and it's supposed to be that way. We're supposed to have iterations of translation that are all valuable.
Temo, would you like to also answer a question or?
Belki Kürt edebiyatının özel durumuyla ilgili bir şey ekleyebilirim. Yani elbette klasik şiir bugünümüzde yaşayan bir şiir değil. Daha çok akademik çevrelerin daha çok ilgisini çekebilecek bir şey. Yaşayan Kürt edebiyatının sadece politik bir olgu olmadığını, bütün o politik durumun bu edebiyatı özel bir edebiyat haline getirdiğini, bu özel edebiyatın da dünya edebiyat kamuoyunun ilgisini çekebileceğini ve bunun da sadece çeviriyle mümkün olabileceğini söyleyebilirim galiba. Uzattım ama.
To add to what Alana said, Temo, he's talking about the special place of Kurdish literature in the world lit, and he said that the classics, Kurdish classics, is something that is mostly known in the academic circles, but the lived or alive literature, Kurdish poetry, is not only a political. It's usually considered to be political, but it's not. It's an alive tradition, but also just for the political reasons, the translation is the only way to get it out in the world. To highlight basically the poetics of the literature, not the politics of it only. Jordan, you have something to say about this question?
Actually, I'm going to deviate a little bit because Öykü, I wanted to ask you what drew you to what drew you to Kurdish culture in the first place? Why are you so dedicated to this mission?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm only dedicated to Kurdish literature. I am dedicated to poetry. But I think what makes me a bit more stubborn about Kurdish literature is what's happening to Kurdish literature. And also whatever I do and what Pinsapo does is only for and with friends. And since Temo became my friend, this is exactly for that reason. But again, I'm dedicated to poetry and translation. And I'm very lucky. I'm a very fortunate cat because I have amazing poets writing in many different languages. But also, yeah, I was born in Turkey. I witnessed most of the atrocities of the 80s and 90s as a child, as a teenager, happening to the Kurdish people, and I'm still witnessing them from a distance. And this is a matter of my own understanding of justice. It's poetics. It's more than politics. It's poetics. And if I contribute even a tiny bit to it, I'm more than happy.
And Selim, do you consider poetry a form of resistance?
Aslında direnişten ziyade hayata dair, şiirin hayata dair var olmaya, evrende, mekanda bir boşluğu doldurmaya dair olduğunu düşünüyorum. Kürt şiiri bütün ezilenlerin şiirleri gibi ya da Kürt edebiyatı bütün ezilen edebiyatlar gibi zaten özünde kendinde bir direniş formu. Ama onu sadece bir direniş olarak tanımlamak ondaki estetik stilistik ve bir bütün olarak insanlara, bütün okurlara ya da edebiyat kamuoyuna söylediği farklı şeyleri örttüğünü düşünüyorum. Yani kendinde zaten direnen bir edebiyattır Özlemlerinki ama ben daha çok stilistik gözlükle, estetik bir gözlükle bakmayı öneriyorum.
More than a resistance, poetry is an attempt to fill a gap in life or in the universe, like most other oppressed languages and literatures. The resistance is already embedded in the poetry, but to define or to describe the poetry of the oppressed just as a resistance would be limited or would limit the poetry. Temo, you, I got only this part. I'm sorry. This is the summary of
Belki senin çevirmediğin kısımları eklemeler yaparak ben kafamda daha gerçi ben Kürtçe yazan birisiyim ve e, e, diyelim ki Adonis'le Dante'yle Firdevsi'yle Baudelaire'le aynı kabileye, tribüye mensup olduğumu düşünüyorum. Sadece varlığı ve özgürlüğü için savaşan bir halkın mensubu olmak elbette o mücadelenin içerisindeyim ama ben şiirin ayrı bir dil, şairlerin ise ayrı bir ulus olduğunu düşünüyorum. İkisine mensup olduğunu söyleyebilirim.
As a poet in Kurdish, I belong to the same tribe of Dante, Baudelaire, Adonis. My people are fighting for their freedom, fighting for their rights, and I belong to that tribe as well. But poetry and poetry and poets belong to their own universe as well.
Ben şairleri aşiret demek istemiştim ama
the poets the poets are the tribe. The tribes are the poets, and the poetry is what? I don't see any other questions, so I would like to ask Alana and Temo to end our conversation with a couple of more poems from the book, please.
Dest pê
There is a quick question for Temo. Are there times you prefer to write between dawn, Eddie, and night?
İyi duyamadım.
Are there times you prefer to write?
Tamam.
You read, yeah, okay.
Şimdi gördüm. Musa sabah yani belli bir zamanı yok ama herkes uyuduktan sonra yapılan her şey herkes uyanıkken yapılandan daha güzel.
There's no particular time to write poetry, but after everyone goes to sleep,
O zaman yapılan her şey uyanıkken
yeah,
daha güzel.
that time when everyone is asleep, what the things that we do is a bit more special or interesting than during the daytime, I guess, during when everyone is awake.
Can we start to read the Batırsoke nav kunjiyan ba ruhe mine mari pişte min xaça latini çuk jimin xeyidine silavna de şapkaya mina parti teneme li nav kunjiyan beyar u zevi cîranên mirî Tikes naye civartê, vîza demê û valahiya min. Şev ji xwe re ye her car, roj a her kesî xelasî tune ji şewatê.
A scarecrow in the sesame. The wind is my soul, my spine a Latin cross. I've sent the birds into a sulk. My frayed hat never waves back. I am alone in the sesame, fallow and sown, dead neighbors. No one comes for company but humming time and my emptiness. Night belongs to itself, day to anyone. There is no hiding from fire.
Ve sanırım Hör General'le devam edebiliriz, değil mi? O tam da belki çevirebilirsin. Tam da zaten kendisi de bir direniş türü olan Kürtçe yazmanın direnişi daha da katmerli söylemeye çalışan bir örneği kendi açımdan tabii.
Temo will read now her general. This could also be an answer to one of Jordan's questions about resistance. This is one of the good examples of how poetry has resistance in itself already embedded.
Hör General, Hör General, Hör General, goristanek ji bo miriyên me. Ez dibînim ku tiliyê te hene. Tiliyên miriyê me jî hebûn. Bêtebat bûn gava êvarê silav dida. Weke li ser têlên gîtareke biraqisin, digeriyan li ser sînga evînekê. Hör General, Hör General, ez dibînim ku çavên te hene. Çavên miriyê me jî hebûn. Bi birû û bijang bûn. Weke berxên serbixêdî, kûr kûr li newalan dinihêrîn. O bêsedem digiriyan. Weke suleveke ji bîr kirî. Hör General, Hör General, goristanek ji bo miriyên me jî. Dizanim ku tu hevdemî, digerî li pişta stêrkan. Ayneya cîhanê destê te de, goristanek ji bo miriyên me jî, ku bitebitin di binê axê de.
So beautiful to hear you read, Temo. Thank you so much. Mamnunum spastakam malaka Allah. Okay. Her General is part of a larger series called Songs of Lament, Stranenshine, and there are two quotes that begin the series. I have lived in important places, times when great events were decided. Who owned that half a rood of rock, a no man's land, surrounded by our pitchfork-armed claims? Patrick Kavanagh. Well, as Kavanagh said, we have lived in important places. The lonely scarp of St. Colum's College, where I billeted for 6 years, overlooked your bog side. Seamus Heaney. Herr General. Herr General, all generals, our latent graveyard. I see you have fingers. Our dead had fingers too, restless at the night's salute, as if dancing on a guitar string or traversing a beloved's chest. Herr General, all generals, I see you have eyes. Our dead had eyes too, eyebrows and eyelashes too, like lambkins in their bridal veils. Deep, deep into the valleys they looked, and suddenly wept. Forgotten cascades. Herr General, all generals, our latent graveyard, I know you share our time. Foraging beyond celestial bodies, in your hand a mirror of the world, and a graveyard for our dead, soil they can rest within.
Spasticigele kaç tıkını? Herhalde sonuncu şiir mi yoksa ne diyorsun?
I think one more would be amazing.
Pungal Bajir, 32, page 32. Pungal Bajir. Agir diçe jengi ve şevi. Stara dinvişta şeheki kotida. Eskirim Pungal Bajir. Liber kelebestin sad sali. Gulan rojekel bahçe min. Taziye min asiya paizi. Gava diçuluse. Mij lidor dengevi. Şareza mevek kunde beste. Her xwîna xwe dimijim. Va diçim şerabeketî dixwazim ji kîsê meytekê serşor. Rawestî li ber deriyê hebûnê, diçe li nav konê şînê kon vedide. Wa xwediyê gemar û kevzê, li min negire, ne ez bûm ê li çola demê. Penelopeyê heft mêr kirin heya vegeriya malê. Keştiya min ji bayê bû, atlasa min bi xeyalan nepixî. Toqek ji laneta pelgan, her ji xwe re diman piştî her mazatê. Ti kes li çavê min nanêre, li pêçiyê min napirse, diheje heyvek li nîvê çalê. Ti kesî ez aş nekirim, gava dişewitîm dilandika dermê de, li derve, li derve, li derve me.
Pennyroyal in the city. Night's honeyed flames, a refuge in the talisman of a leprous sheikh, turns me into pennyroyal in the city, beside the centuries' dead rivers. May is a single day in my garden, naked as if autumn shade, mist glistening around her voice. I am wise as an owl in the ruins. I sip my own blood. Now I'm off to order another drink on some compliant corpse's tab. Standing before the door of existence, within grief, she pitches her mourning tent. O God of filth and froth, forgive me. It wasn't me out in the wilds of time. Penelope had 7 husbands. Before I came home, my ship was air, my sailcloth filled by fantasy, my anchor cursed green. Auction after auction, I belong to myself. No one meets my eyes. No one asks after my extremities. A moon trembles in the middle of a well. No one came to soothe me as I screamed in the cradle of time. I am outside, outside, outside.
Thank you very much, Alana.
Thank you. Well, this is so wonderful. Thank you so much for everyone who is here, especially our participant speakers. I'll ask James now to bring everyone to the front. If you guys want to just say hi. We have friends, we have family, we have the whole world here and about 20 languages. Hi. Oh, wow. Anne, hi. Anne Waldman is here.
Hi to
Musa.
all.
Wonderful hearing the language and beautiful translations. Thank you so much.
Oh, Marine, she's, our Pinsapo person. Hey, Marine.
Hi.
You're still at work?
Yeah, I'm still at work, but about to leave.
Marine works at Ugly Duckling Press, and also she's with us. Oh, Baz, Marta, hi. We don't hear you. Wait, can you unmute yourself? No. James, are you still here? Let me see. Yeah, he's here. James, can you unmute everyone? Let's see. Oh, and here we have Shiwan. Shiwan is Temo's son. He's an excellent musician. Oh, wow.
Say Alana is a
That's
wonder.
so,
I could say Alana is a real wonder. Alana is a real wonder.
yes.
Yeah, she's
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
your
And
devotion
I-
is volumes.
I wish you all had gotten to meet Zêdan, the wonderful co-translator, because when we were co-translating together, whenever we would really get something, we would work on it. Sometimes it would be a single word. I remember the word for furrowed or lined. We spent like 45 minutes on that one word. And so Zêdan is very much a part of the wonder of these translations. Whatever wonder exists in the translations, Zêdan is very present in that.
So this is it.
And of course, you can hear how the original poems, like, you get so lucky when you translate someone like Temo. Like, there's nothing, you don't have to do anything. You just
That's right.
keep it simple, and your job is done.
There you go.
Yeah. Whoever writes the line, the last line of that last poem we read, I hope you could hear the repetition in the Kurdish itself. But it was just such an easy,
Very lucky now
easy,
because we
colorful
can
line.
hear things over and over. We can hear language we don't understand and hear what we understand in it without hearing it. Without knowing what the language is. It's just, it is true. It's quite enlightening.
It's beautiful stuff. Thank you.
I think this is it. Shall we say bye?
Yeah, I think this is it. But once again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. It's good to meet Selim.
Thank you,
and,
Öykü, for taking
Alana.
all these risks with us.
Absolutely. And here's one last link. If you would like to get a copy of this book, you can just click on it. We'll have more events, hopefully in person, more so than on Zoom. But anyway, this is it. I love you all.
Take care.
Huge love to everyone.
Well, good night.
Bye.
Thanks so much.